Welcome back. This is like the fourth series I made on this channel so far. I'm just having a lot of fun making videos and I feel very creative. So I figured I would start talking about some of my favorite records of all time. And this one right here is my favorite rap record ever. It will not change. It is not something like an Illmatic. It is not something like a To Pimp a Butterfly. It's not even considered some of people's favorites, Daytona. It's King Push, Darkest Before Dawn, The Prelude, which released on December 18th of 2015. Just to give a little bit of quick context before we talk about this record. Beforehand, the most recent album was My Name Is My Name in 2013, which was very mainstream appealing. It had a lot of mainstream appealing beats and a lot of features that were very popping off at the time, like Chris Brown. You had Future, you had Jeezy, you had Big Sean. A lot of people at these times were getting very popular. And Pusha at this time was still a few years off from the Clips kind of dissolving. And Pusha T was trying to find his own sound as a solo artist. And while this album, My Name Is My Name, was still a pretty great listen, still one of my favorite records, there was a big complaint of it that it just was too mainstream appealing and it was kind of lost in this mainstream sound that we didn't really get an idea of what Pusha T was really going for. This album still had some moments though, like Numbers on the Boards, and you still had Nostalgia, and you had Snitch. These songs kind of were the placements and kind of the starting points of where Pusha was going to go as a solo artist. So leading up to this record here, Pusha T became the president of Good Music and was still doing quite a bit of collaborations with Adidas at the time. And what I can say that this record does so much more than My Name Is My Name is that this album is a lot more compact. It is a lot more lyrically dense. It is a lot more interesting with flows and production. And to this point, this is probably Pusha's most adventurous album when it comes to trying out new things, trying out new flows, but still keeping the trademark coke rap that he is so elite at. And this album too, around this time, this sounded like Pusha was still trying to prove something. It sounded hungrier, it sounded more aggressive, and it sounded like he was really trying to make this the big focal point, is that this is where my career is at as a solo artist now. It's a big statement piece to me. And I'm just going to go through track by track of how this is my favorite rap record of all time. So the intro starts off Metro Boomin on the production on this. The bass is just hitting so aggressively, hitting just on all fronts. And the kind of spoken interlude at the beginning of this album talks about, it's like, do you want to be a drug dealer or do you want to be a rapper? You can't pick one. And right off the gate, right off of that kind of start to this album, Pusha T starts with the line, leave your conscience at the door. I speak to the trap lords with their hands in the white like blackboards. Amazing bar to start off this album. And the intro itself has so many lines, so many quotables that could fill up an entire album all by itself. And again, this starts off as almost like a statement piece. It's so much more aggressive. It's so much more of a statement kind of sound for Pusha. And he sounds so hungry on this song. And the way that this album kicks off with a bang, it just gets you so engaged and immediately grabs your attention. Untouchable continues with that. This one is a lot more kind of sinister. It's a lot more evil. And just the lyrics on here, I'm like Bono with the edge. And you have lyrics like, it's different calisthenics when you hit the Linux. Like there's, like Pusha at this point in time really just spent so much time just writing and having these one-liners and these quotables. And even sometimes when these lines are not like crazy, like, whoa, like they just blow your mind, it's the delivery that really makes some of these lines that would sound kind of pedestrian sometimes to make them a lot more standout than they should be. Pusha definitely, with the delivery and the flows on this record, makes every line sound so interesting, sound so biting, and makes it sound so much more captivating and believable. You get to MFTR with The Dream. The Dream around this point in his career was using this angelic and pillowy voice to sing some really sinister and evil lyrics. And the chorus on this, especially when you think of The Dream's voice, the last line of it is, "It's funny how a tech can make a brother religious." And then you have Pusha with this really aggressive and really just all gas, no brakes flow. And you have 3 amazing verses. And the way that Pusha's last verse ends is that "I'm America's worst nightmare, night, night." And then it just goes into The Dream's like angelic and soft singing of these very violent and very dark lyrics. It makes this song, to me, one of the most interesting on this record, that it kind of can play both sides and still sound very aggressive and bleak. And then you get to Crushes Crosses Caskets. Has another amazing beat. It sounds a little bit more kind of off kilter and something that you would not expect from Pusha. And also, it kind of sounds like it's bringing a little bit of the sound of the Clips kind of back into the sound. And there's so many lines on here. L. Ron Hubbard of the Cupboard. There's just so many amazing lines on here that every single time I listen to this record, and kind of a quick aside before we get to the second part of this album and discussion. Sure, this record released in 2015, and while you're thinking it's just like, why this random record? Why not something like The College Dropout? Why not something like, I don't know, AT Aliens? I started discovering music around 2013, where I was becoming a lot more musically independent. I was trying to find my sound, trying to find my tastes. And this record here was the first record around that time where I was really catching lines, and I was really catching quotables. And sure, like in 2013, I was listening to Mac Miller, which I probably will talk about here at some point, and I was listening to Earl Sweatshirt. It was definitely a lot more vibe and a lot more of the sound for it for me. But with King Push, Darkest Before Dawn, The Prelude, this was the first rap album for me, besides T-Pab obviously, but I didn't really get onto T-Pab till later. But this was the first album for me where lyrically I got it. And I understood, and I was locked in just by the lyrics of this album. So many quotables and so many lines live in my head rent free from these songs. Another line from Crutches Crosses Caskets is probably one of my favorite lines ever, and it's "Banana Clips for all you curious Georges." It could be a line that's been said before, but for me, this is where I first heard it, and it still lives in my head rent free, and I think about this line quite often still. But that's kind of where I'm at with this record, and why this makes this record so special to me, is that I am almost 10 years deep with this record, and I am still catching lines, and I'm still catching lyrical and kind of production moments that I didn't catch on listens when I was younger. I'm kind of growing with this record. As this album grows older, I'm growing more wiser, or maybe more knowledgeable of the lines that are being said here, which makes the album consistently interesting. Not to mention, this record is only 33 minutes long. I can throw this on a car ride and get so much out of it in 33 minutes. And you're in, you get engaged, it's just all gas, no brakes, and then you're gone. It's perfect. So if you're looking for a very trim listen that's going to give you a lot of content, this album is incredible for that. And I know Daytona is like 7 tracks, and it's also lyrically dense and has some incredible moments on it. I feel like with this album, it's much more fully realized, and there's more of a fuller experience with this album for me. So that's, if you're thinking this is like, how is this better than Daytona for me? That's the big reason why. So then we get to Money, Pussy, Alcohol with A$AP Rocky, Kanye West, and The Dream. Do I wish that A$AP Rocky and Kanye West had actual rap verses on this song? Yes. The Dream brings kind of more of a pre-chorus at the beginning, and then A$AP Rocky and Kanye West sing the chorus on this song. And originally, this was probably my least favorite song on this album. But to prove that I've kind of grown with this album over time, I listened to this album maybe about a few hours ago this evening as I was driving back from work, because I was looking to make a video on this thing. And what I really now appreciate about this song is not that it's a perfect kind of letdown or a perfect kind of cool off from all of these songs here. It's a perfectly placed track at number 5. But this song is so much more mature and so much more of an interesting concept lyrically for Pusha that you really haven't heard before. And it kind of talks about how the women kind of in this environment of being in the drug scene and kind of being more around the pimps and all this kind of stuff there too, of how they're being disrespected, they're being demeaned, and they're not being respected. So the women are now going to baseball players, they're going to people with a lot more money and a lot more respect towards them. And Pusha talks about how the people in the drug scene may be talking behind their backs or being demeaning or being disrespectful for the women going down this path and reaching for these men. But the way that Pusha deals with it is that it's kind of almost just like, I understand and I hope for the best for you. It's not talking down negatively. It is not talking down in a demeaning manner or saying why that you're doing this, why the hell are you doing this. It's more is that it kind of takes the perspective. It's just like, I hope they treat you better. I know they'll treat you better. And I hope they dig deeper to keep you and know that you're worth it. And that is such an amazing moment on this album that I have not realized until very recently, that is such an amazing, mature, and just very kind of optimistic view, especially when you consider how dark and how gritty this record can be. And it gets grittier and darker as you kind of go along. But that kind of middle portion of this record, and again, how I've kind of grown with it, makes this song take a whole different meaning. And I love that song now just because of how it really just puts a really unique perspective in this kind of genre of coke rap. So then you get into the much more grittier section of this record, in my opinion. You got "'Em Covered," which again brings kind of more of the Clips kind of sound back. And it has a different kind of tempo and a different kind of beat that you don't really hear Pusha go over all that often. But it allows Pusha to test a lot more flows and test a lot more deliveries. And Abliva, who's shown up on a couple records before, and he was on My Name Is My Name there too, on Suicide. On "Got 'Em Covered," this is probably one of my favorite features from him, and he also messes around with different flows, and they both just glide over this beat so perfectly. And then you get to Keep Dealing, which is probably the most ghostly and probably the most ethereal sounding song on this album. And this is another one that was also one of my weaker ones. It's one of my favorites now. And the big reason for that is Beanie Sigel. Pusha brings an incredible performance, obviously, because I love this record so much. But Beanie Sigel brings some amazing, amazing lines. Like, I've never seen a Brinks truck follow a hearse. And another one that just caught me maybe about a year or two ago is, "You've watched me walk through hell. Now watch me walk about it." Disgustingly just brutal lines. But the way, again, that is delivered, especially with Beanie Siegel's like voice of how kind of gruff it sounds, and again, the delivery makes it just sound so believable, and it makes it sound that much more just captivating whenever it's on. And then you get Retribution, which is probably another one of those kind of, not like a softer kind of song, but it's definitely the one that would be the most appealing, like Money, Pussy, Alcohol is when it comes to the production. But Pusha is not letting up when especially comes to the delivery. He is jumping around all over this instrumental, and the bass hits are so deep, and they're so kind of booming and just pounding. And it just makes the song sound so dynamic, so interesting. And then again, it's almost like MFTR, where it's contrasted with this really beautiful voice and really beautiful chorus delivered by Kaylani, sorry. Just overall, it's just like, this is a song that if you're looking for a very casual song to throw on a playlist, this is perfect for that. And then you get to FIFA. FIFA is probably, I was talking about some of these songs having a very kind of going back to the clip sound. This is definitely the most clip sounding song on this album, produced by Q-Tip. Drug Money Kicked Around Like It's FIFA is the big chorus on this thing. And it's so bouncy, it's so fun, it's really catchy there too. And that's another song, if you just want to throw casually on a playlist as a little bit of sampler of this thing, I really recommend you listen to FIFA, because man, it is so much fun. And then you get to Sunshine with Jill Scott. This is the most politically driven song that Pusha has put on this album, and probably the most politically driven song that Pusha has made. And it's a lot about police brutality and kind of the political climate of where we were in 2015 and how kind of still ringing it is now, of how kind of prevalent these kind of topics are. And again, it just puts Pusha into a different perspective of being more wiser, taking the coke rap aside and being able to show that he can be introspective, he can be interesting, and he can be very captivating, not just as a coke rapper, but as but just a rapper in general. And that ends off my favorite rap record ever. I can talk about this record even more, but I don't want to keep you forever, but goodness sakes, I love talking about this record. And again, it's very trim at 33 minutes. I constantly get something new every time I listen to it. And it's going to be almost 10 years. It's going to be 10 years in 2025 that I discovered this thing. But I'm glad that this record came into existence and came into my music discovery, because now I appreciate so much about lyricism. I appreciate compact listens, and I appreciate an album that can grow with me and stick with me for so long. Just my favorite rap record ever. So this is one of my GOAT albums. I will talk to you again whenever I feel like I want to talk about another one of my GOAT albums. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And catch you next time.